theme that Matt left off with, because you can't teach it, and both my parents modeled it, and I think everyone around them learned from that. It's not something you can teach, and they modeled it in a way that was not overbearing, not intrusive. If you look at the belief systems of all of us siblings, we are radically different, just about as different as you could be. And that goes to this integrity that both my parents had, which was to respect and value each of us equally. They were treated as equally to a fault, not just in things monetarily, but in love and everything else. They were golden in that. And as like John, I can remember going off to Goddard College and us packing in the old, I think it was a Chevrolet, horrible car, whatever, station wagon. We were all stuck with those in the 60s. And Dad supported him taking this alternative educational route, which Goddard very much was. Matt and Tracy mentioned how, I believe it was John, and Tracy mentioned how when John decided to become a conscientious objector to the draft, Dad supported that, as well as did Mom. And that was, again, valuing each of us as individuals with an integrity, which I think is so rare in this world. And Dad modeled this in his professional life. When he was in charge of building a whole new plant for a whole new division of Moog, he insisted every single person had to have a window. Every single worker. And as an office worker of 35 plus years without a window, that's important. but he truly supported the people below him. I've worked in any number of office settings where people were kiss-ups to people above them and treated the people below them like dirt. And he was the exact opposite. If he had a disagreement with the people above him, he said it. And he was viewed as a, quote-unquote, use the pejorative term, Boy Scout, often, by some of his more careerist colleagues. Now that's about my dad. For my mom, I have grown. Just one example. She was an advocate for community mental health way before it was popular. In fact, it was definitely unpopular, and she was not just an advocate, she was going in, she was organizing in East Aurora for something that was deeply unpopular. She was, as John and others have mentioned, she was organizing against the draft, including smuggling people across the border who didn't want to be drafted into killing other people in Vietnam. And Dad supported her in that, even though if this had gotten out, then their phones were tapped. They were smart about not saying these things on the phone, obviously, but they would have lost not only Dad's job, but probably a house and everything else. And that took so much integrity. And she was doing this right up, until she could no longer be active. She was probably active for close to, if not more than a half century. And so, if you remember my parents, for one thing, it's that integrity and striving to make this a better world, regardless of how many people and how many forces were arrayed against you, because they both did that in their lives. Now, not everyone needs to get as teary as I am right now, but we would love for each of you to come up here and briefly share your remarks. You have to be pretty close to the microphone here. I think Pam is our first volunteer. Pam is a dear friend. Come on up here, Pam. But just try and keep your remarks a little on the brief side, that other people have an opportunity. And if we run out of time here, there will also be an opportunity to say remarks at the pavilion that we'll be going to for lunch. Thank you.
Bill were like a second family to me. It all started when I was 5 years old and my family moved to Greenwood Drive, where the Thayers already lived. They were five doors down. Well, Ree asked Tracy to go and introduce herself to the new girl on the block. So Tracy picked a bouquet of violets and walked down the block, rang my doorbell. I answered, and she thrust the bouquet at me and said, "Can I be your friend?" That was more than 50 years ago, and we're still friends today.
Yay.
So, Ree was a wonderful role model. As you said, she was always ahead of her time when it came to environmental issues and healthy eating. And I remember asking her about a container, a bottle filled with little pieces of soap by her kitchen sink, and she said it was her homemade dish soap so that the little pieces of soap wouldn't go to waste. And another thing that sticks in my mind and stuck to the roof of my mouth was her all-natural peanut butter, which was so different from the Skippy that we had at my house. Bill got a lot of joy from building things for kids. In fact, the Thayers, I thought, had the best play yard on the block. There was a teeter-totter, there were tree houses, there was a playhouse for us girls. And sometime during all that construction, Bill made me a little house from 2 scraps of wood. And here it is. I colored it with crayon, and I've kept it all these years because it was so special. So here I am today, an architect and a health food nut. Like I said, Bill and Ree they were a great influence on me. So fast forward to 1990, and shortly after setting up my architectural practice, Bill and Ree hired me to design their house in Ithaca. And it was an honor and a privilege. It was during that time that I went from calling them Mr. and Mrs. Thayer to Bill and Ree. And they were wonderful clients. They always worked really well together, making all those decisions that go into designing a house. When we came up with a theme, a walk in the woods with the timber framing kind of like trees lining the path of slate. So Bill and I, and Ree and I, we'd all get together for regular design meetings. And I'll always remember one in particular, when Bill surprised me with a scaled model of the house. And he'd worked on it for weeks, especially hard in the last couple days, because before our meeting he wanted to get it done, Ree said, to show Pam. And he was really proud of it, and it came in handy later on when we brought it to the town board and we got the building permit. So, really useful. In 1995, Greg and I were looking for land to build our own house, when one day we got a phone call. It was Ree who said, "Bill and I have been talking, and we were wondered if you would be interested in buying some of our land." Well, I wasn't sure because there was a power line about 1,000 feet away. And being the health food nut that I was, or health nut, I wasn't sure that, we wanted to live near an electromagnetic field. Well, Bill got a hold of a gauze meter, and we all walked across the field towards the power line. And it didn't register anything until we were directly underneath it. So we bought the land, built our house, and became Bill and Ree's neighbors. Ree helped me plant the first tree on our property. Another neighbor up the road said she had too many trees sprouting up on our land, and would we be interested in digging one up? So Ree and I did. We went and dug up a tree and planted it in our front yard. Well, it's still there today, much bigger. And then later when I got into wild edibles, it was Ree who showed me how to dig up burdock root to make burdock balls. So then in 1997, Greg had our baby Adrian, and Bill and Ree were right there to welcome her home. Bill was taking pictures, Ree with a nice meal and lots of reassuring advice for us clueless parents. When I started back to work, Ree helped me mitigate anxiety separation. She took, sometimes crying 80, she took her out in her arms outside. Ree always said she loved the challenge of a fussy baby. And I watched from the window. As Adrian stopped crying and got real interested in the birds that Auntie Ree was showing her. And that's when Bill and Ree became Auntie Ree and Uncle Boo. Adrian called Bill Uncle Boo. And every year they helped us celebrate Adrian's birthdays, and they were just always there for us. One example of that is Adrian's first day of 5th grade. It was kind of rough because she thought her teacher was mean, and none of her friends were in her class. So I called up Ree and I asked if Adie could come over. And Ree said she'd be delighted to have Adie visit. So she went over. Tracy had told me before that Ree was a little down since Bill's passing and asked if I could send Adie over occasionally to cheer Ree up. Well, Adie went over, and one of the gems of my day that day was hearing Adie and Auntie Ree walking home in the dark laughing. And Adie said, "That was really fun, Auntie Ree." And I feel all cheered up. So